Welcome to Life Stories, where we share heartfelt tales that touch your soul and leave you reflecting on life's profound lessons. Today, we dive into the extraordinary journey of Emily, a beautiful young woman from a small town whose life was shaped by secrets, struggles, and ultimately, the transformative power of love and forgiveness. This story is one of resilience, healing, and finding hope in the face of overwhelming challenges. Stay with us to discover how Emily's courage helped her reclaim her life and rewrite her destiny. Don't forget to subscribe to Life Stories to start today's journey with us. In the quaint town of Willow Creek, nestled in the gentle embrace of rolling hills and lined with streets where every neighbor knew each other, there lived a young woman named Emily. From the moment she entered her teenage years, Emily had captivated the hearts of everyone in her community. Her striking beauty was impossible to ignore, skin that seemed to glow under the sunlight, a radiant smile that could lift the heaviest of hearts, and eyes so kind they felt like a warm embrace. She was the pride of the town, the subject of admiration, and the object of affection for men far and wide. Suitors came from neighboring towns and distant places, all with one goal: to win her hand in marriage. Each man, no matter his status, was met with the same gentle but firm rejection. Emily, despite her outer perfection, carried a weight inside her that no one could see. People whispered, speculating why she remained unattached. But Emily let the rumors float by without explanation. To most, she was a mystery, an untouchable gem that no one could claim. But the truth Emily bore was far more complex than anyone could imagine. Since she was 15, she had felt a strange, unrelenting burning deep within her. It wasn't physical pain, but an insatiable restlessness that seemed to course through her veins. It made her feel alive and suffocated all at once. At first, she thought it was a phase, something that would pass with time. But the feelings only grew stronger. She discovered that being with men, not romantically, but intimately, calmed the fire. If only briefly. It wasn't a choice, it felt like a necessity, a force she couldn't resist. Emily confided in only two people, her closest friends, Sarah and Jake. They were the kind of friends who had stood by her through thick and thin, and she trusted them with her life. With trembling hands and tear-filled eyes, she explained her struggle, the guilt that gnawed at her every time she sought solace with yet another man. They listened without judgment, offering support in their own ways. Sarah held her hand and whispered words of comfort, while Jake, ever the pragmatic one, suggested she seek professional help. But Willow Creek wasn't a town where secrets were easy to keep. Rumors had a way of growing legs and wandering into every corner. Though Emily was discreet, she feared that her restless nature would become an open secret. She avoided the judgmental gazes of her neighbors and pretended to be unbothered by the questions her parents often asked. Emily, her mother, would say, "You're so beautiful. Any man would be lucky to have you. Why not settle down?" Emily would smile, a small, practiced smile, and say she wasn't ready. How could she explain to them that no one man would ever be enough? As Emily grew older, her condition worsened. By the time she turned 25, the fire inside her was consuming her life. She had long since lost track of the number of men she had been with. Not out of desire, but necessity. The shame she carried weighed heavily on her. Yet she found no reprieve. Nights were the hardest. She would lie awake, tears streaming down her face, wondering why she had been cursed with this relentless hunger. She hated herself for the life she was living, but she didn't know how to stop. Her friends tried to help in their own ways, but the problem seemed insurmountable. Therapy was expensive, and even when she could afford it, the sessions often ended in frustration. The professionals she saw didn't understand the depth of her struggle, and their suggestions felt hollow. Emily was left to navigate her torment alone, relying on Sarah and Jake for whatever solace they could provide. And yet, despite the fire that consumed her, Emily still dreamed of love. She wondered if there was someone out there who could see past her flaws, who could understand her pain without turning away. Deep down, she longed for a connection that wasn't tainted by the darkness inside her. But every time she thought about opening her heart to someone, the fear of rejection and judgment held her back. Emily's beauty and charm remained undiminished. Even as her spirit grew weary, people in Willow Creek continued to admire her from afar, unaware of the battle she fought every day. To them, she was perfection personified, a beacon of grace and elegance. But to Emily, she was a woman trapped in a life she didn't want, yearning for freedom from a curse she didn't understand. And so, she continued her quiet struggle, her heart heavy with secrets and her mind filled with questions. Would she ever find peace? Could she ever be loved for who she truly was? Fire and all, Emily didn't know the answers. But she clung to a fragile hope that somewhere, somehow, there was a way out of the darkness. The story of Emily was just beginning. And though she didn't know it yet, her life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. Life in Willow Creek continued at its leisurely pace, with the townsfolk carrying on their daily routines, oblivious to the inner turmoil of their beloved Emily. Then, one fateful autumn afternoon, while Emily was leaving a small cafe, she bumped into a man who would unknowingly change her life. His name was Daniel. And from the moment she met his warm gaze, something stirred within her, something different from the restless fire she had always known. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice gentle and filled with genuine concern. Emily, caught off guard, simply nodded, unable to find her words. Daniel smiled, an easy, comforting smile, and offered to walk her home. It was an innocent gesture. But for Emily, it felt like stepping into uncharted territory. She accepted, her heart fluttering in a way it never had before. Over the following weeks, Emily and Daniel's paths began to intertwine. He was kind, patient, and remarkably attentive, a stark contrast to the relationships Emily had endured out of necessity. For the first time in her life, she felt seen, not as a beautiful face or a fleeting moment of desire, but as a person worth knowing. Daniel listened when she spoke, laughed at her jokes, and brought her small, thoughtful gifts that warmed her heart. Slowly, she allowed herself to believe that love might be possible, even for her. Their bond deepened as the days turned into months. And soon, Daniel confessed his feelings. "Emily," he said one evening, under the soft glow of the streetlights, "I think I'm falling in love with you." Her heart raced. She wanted to believe in his words, to trust the sincerity in his voice. But her secret loomed like a dark cloud over their budding romance. Still, against her better judgment, she allowed herself to hope. Maybe, just maybe, Daniel could be the one to quiet the fire within her. Perhaps his love could bring her the peace she had long sought. But the fire didn't stop. No matter how deeply she cared for Daniel, no matter how much she wanted to change, the relentless pull of her condition remained. It gnawed at her, driving her to seek out the fleeting relief she could only find in other men. Each time she gave in, the guilt weighed heavier on her heart. She hated herself for betraying Daniel, but she couldn't resist the fire's demand. And so, Emily lived a double life, smiling brightly by day and crying herself to sleep at night. Daniel, ever the romantic, had no inkling of Emily's struggle. He adored her, oblivious to the secrets she carried. When he proposed to her one crisp winter evening, kneeling on one knee with a ring that sparkled like the frost on the ground, Emily was overwhelmed. Tears filled her eyes as she said yes. Not because she believed she deserved him, but because she desperately wanted to. Excited about her engagement, Emily shared the news with her two closest friends, Sarah and Jake. They celebrated with laughter, toasts, and heartfelt congratulations. But beneath the surface, Sarah's smile was tinged with something darker, envy. She had always lived in Emily's shadow, and watching her friend, with all her flaws and secrets, find love and happiness was too much to bear. Why should Emily, who had been with countless men, get a perfect love story, while Sarah, who had always played by the rules, was left alone. That bitterness festered, growing into resentment. And eventually, a plan. Sarah decided to expose Emily's secret, convinced that the truth would bring everything crashing down. On the day of Emily and Daniel's wedding, the town gathered in a beautifully decorated hall to celebrate what should have been the happiest day of their lives. Emily, radiant in her gown, stood beside Daniel, their hands intertwined as they prepared to exchange vows. Then, it happened. The large screen at the front of the hall flickered to life, and instead of a slideshow of cherished memories, a video began to play. The guests gasped as images of Emily with various men filled the screen. Whispers spread like wildfire, and the weight of their judgment crashed down on Emily. She froze, her world crumbling before her eyes. Daniel's face turned pale as he stared at the screen, disbelief etched across his features. Without a word, he let go of Emily's hand and walked out of the hall. She ran after him, her cries echoing in the cold air. But Daniel was already driving away, leaving her alone in her shame. It was Sarah who had orchestrated the betrayal, fueled by jealousy and bitterness. Emily didn't know it yet, but the one person she had trusted with her deepest secret had become the architect of her greatest downfall. And in that moment, as she stood alone in the middle of the chaos, Emily realized that the life she had tried so hard to hold together was falling apart. Piece by fragile piece. The days following the disastrous wedding were a blur of pain and regret for Emily. She stayed hidden in her small apartment, curtains drawn tightly, as if blocking out the world could also keep her shame at bay. Willow Creek buzzed with gossip. What had been the town's best-kept secret was now its most scandalous revelation. Emily felt like she was drowning in the weight of her exposed truth. The stares, the whispers, the pity, it was all too much to bear. Jake, always the steadfast friend, stayed by her side, offering quiet comfort when words felt inadequate. He didn't ask questions or demand explanations, he simply sat with her in the silence, ensuring she didn't face the darkness alone. Emily confided in him about her heartbreak. She missed Daniel desperately, but more than that, she hated the person she had become. She hated the fire inside her that had robbed her of so much. "What do I do, Jake?" she asked one evening, her voice trembling with despair. "How do I fix something that feels so broken?" "You start by forgiving yourself," he replied, his tone gentle but firm. "And then, you get help. Real help." Emily took his advice to heart. For the first time, she confronted her condition with seriousness and sought out a specialist in a nearby city. The doctor listened intently as Emily poured out her story, and for the first time, she felt truly understood. Through therapy and medical guidance, Emily began to unpack the root of her struggles. She learned to manage the fire within her, not with shame or avoidance, but with self-awareness and care. The process wasn't easy. Every session unearthed layers of pain and trauma she hadn't even realized she carried. But step by step, she began to heal. She started to see herself not as a cursed woman, but as someone deserving of love and compassion. Even from herself. It was a fragile hope, but it grew stronger with time. Months passed, and while the world moved on, Emily rebuilt her life. She avoided the places and people that reminded her of her past. She focused on her therapy, her friendships, and finding small joys in everyday moments. She wasn't ready to face Willow Creek just yet, but she knew she was growing stronger. Then, one quiet afternoon, an envelope arrived in her mailbox. It was from Daniel. Emily's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a letter, written in Daniel's familiar handwriting. He had taken time to process what had happened. He explained. And though he had been hurt and confused, he had come to understand that Emily's struggle wasn't entirely her fault. His words were kind, even forgiving. And at the end of the letter, he had written a phone number with a simple note: "Call me if you're ready to talk." Emily stared at the number for what felt like hours. Her heart torn between hope and fear. Could she face him after everything? Did she deserve a second chance? Finally, she dialed. When Daniel answered, his voice was calm, steady, and warm. Their conversation began awkwardly, but as they spoke, the barriers between them began to crumble. Emily told him everything, sparing no detail, and for the first time, she felt truly free of the burden of her secret. Daniel listened, not with judgment, but with empathy. By the time the call ended, they had taken the first tentative steps toward reconciliation. Over the next few weeks, Daniel and Emily rebuilt their relationship, brick by fragile brick. He didn't promise it would be easy, and she didn't expect him to fix her. But they agreed to face the challenges together. Daniel became her greatest ally, supporting her through her continued therapy and encouraging her to embrace her progress. But there was still one relationship Emily couldn't reconcile so easily, her friendship with Sarah. Emily had eventually learned the truth that Sarah had been the one to expose her. The betrayal cut deeper than she could express. And while Sarah came to Emily seeking forgiveness, tearfully admitting to her jealousy and regret, the damage had been done. "I forgive you," Emily said softly when Sarah finally found the courage to apologize. "But I can't forget." Their friendship never returned to what it once was. And Emily accepted that some wounds, while forgiven, could never fully heal. As time went on, Emily and Daniel's bond grew stronger. They chose a quiet, intimate wedding surrounded by only a few close friends, with Jake standing proudly by Emily's side. Though her journey to this moment had been painful, it had also shaped her into someone stronger, more compassionate, and more self-aware. In the end, Emily found the peace she had long sought not in perfection or in hiding her flaws, but in embracing them as part of who she was. She learned that true love isn't about being perfect, it's about being honest and willing to grow together. And so, Emily and Daniel began their new life, not as a fairy tale, but as a story of resilience, healing, and hope, a story they would write together, one day at a time. As Emily and Daniel stepped into their new life together, it was a testament to the power of forgiveness, resilience, and unconditional love. Emily had faced her darkest fears and learned to accept herself, imperfections and all. Daniel's unwavering support showed that true love is not about avoiding challenges but about facing them together with compassion and understanding. Their journey wasn't perfect, but it was real. Emily continued her therapy, Daniel stood by her side, and they built a life based on honesty, growth, and mutual respect. Willow Creek may have whispered about their past, but Emily and Daniel focused on their future, a future filled with hope, love, and the strength that comes from overcoming life's trials. Thank you for joining me in this emotional story of redemption and love. Don't forget to subscribe to Life Stories for more heartfelt and inspiring tales. See you in the next video.